Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm your host, Trudy Rankin. And today I'm talking to someone who is very good at explaining complex things simply. She's already started to do that with me. We were just talking before, and she has the ability to help people figure out how to use tools and technology and systems and automation to help people who are busy entrepreneurs get time back in their day. And who doesn't want some time back in your day? I spent a bit of time yesterday just sitting down trying to figure out how I could save a little bit of time on one small part of what I do. So it's something that everyone needs. The person I'm speaking with today is Khadirah Muhammad, and she's going to be talking today. She's going to explain a little bit about what she does. She's going to just share a little bit about her business journey, but then she's going to get stuck into something that I find when I talk to other entrepreneurs, especially ones that are just getting started, is a topic that tends to scare them just a little bit. And this is a specific tool that's freely available. You can have a free account on it, but it is one of the best tools that I've found for automating a step-by-step process. That means you don't have to do that anymore, and it can save you time. And we're talking about Zapier, and we'll talk about Zapier and other things as well. But I know that for a lot of people, when you hear about Zapier and what it does, a lot of first-time beginners just go, that's too scary. So we're going to talk about that. And without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Khadirah.
Thank you so much, Trudy. I really appreciate it. That was a stellar introduction, and I'm extremely excited about this conversation and hopefully providing a lot of value to your audience.
So maybe just talk to me a little bit about the things that you love doing and that you find super helpful for the people that you've worked with.
Perfect. So my main focus, as you mentioned earlier, is helping people get their time back. And I do that using systems. And my whole goal for anybody that I either work with one-on-one, or people who, who are on my YouTube channels, people who listen to content, whatever it is to help them achieve lifestyle freedom for themselves, which for me is a combination of time freedom and financial freedom. Because if you have a bunch of time, but you don't have money, you're very limited as to what you can really do. But even if you have a lot of money and you don't have time, now you're still stuck. So to me, it's the rhythm between both of those. And I believe more in like a work-life rhythm more than I believe in work-life balance, because I think it's like ebbs and flows, and like in a song, not all the instruments are playing at the same time. There's some instruments that are dominating a little bit more, but then there's other parts in the song where there's other instruments that are playing. So it still flows together and makes a beautiful song that people want to keep playing over and over again. So that's like the ultimate goal. And how I help people do that is with systems and automation. And in particularly what I mean by that is it's really looking at their business and figuring out how they can stay in their zone of genius as much as possible. Whatever their gift is, whatever they enjoy doing, whatever is their passion, because we're often not passionate about every single little thing that our business actually requires. Like, I love building systems. I love auditing. I actually literally was in the middle of auditing one of my clients' is operations and marketing operations, because I like doing that. I do that personally. I'm not a big fan of bookkeeping. I don't do that personally, but my business needs that, right? And when we look at the QuickBooks, and I'm like, well, tell me what you need, and then I'll get you the receipt. But even though my business needs, that doesn't mean I have to do it, right? I can focus on what I'm very particularly good at. So my content and everything I talk about is around using systems and automation to help you get to that point. And so one of the ways that I do that is using tools like Zapier and teaching people about key technologies without them being overwhelmed by it. I'm particularly good at that, right? I can like explain Zapier, how it works general. So that way people don't look at it like, all right, here it is. It's here. It's asking me to do a bunch of stuff. I don't even know what's supposed to happen. Like, how can I really use that, and how is it beneficial to me? So I'm really good at breaking stuff like that down, and also even explaining like the concepts of processes, what really is a system, what's really a standard operating procedure. And I hired somebody. I thought they were going to just do everything, but how come they can't just figure it out? And like explain the concept that you can't just hire somebody without actually giving them something to do, or being clear as to what's the result they're supposed to be achieving. So that way it's a good experience for both of you.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the things that you do in terms of how you're helping people. Could you share with us just a little bit about your background, where you come from, and how you got to where you are now?
Oh, absolutely. I'm happy to. So again, my name is Khadirah Muhammad. I've been in business for about 4 years. I actually started about 6 months before I graduated college back in 2019. And particularly I got started with a digital marketing agency because I had actually been working in marketing and at marketing agencies pretty much since I had been in college. So it's kind of a natural transition. And especially because I was applying for a bunch of jobs and nobody was calling me back. So I was like, well, let's see, try to figure this out and just see what kind of happens from here. I had been doing that for about maybe 2.5-ish years and enjoyed it. But I got to the point where my business was being successful. I was getting client results and all that, but I was spending a lot of time doing everything for my clients. It was really just me doing all the work and all the ads and all that fun stuff. And I also realized that even though I was getting my own clients results for themselves, they were still spending like a lot of time in their businesses. And really it's a lot of time on what I saw as really small stuff that I figured out. I'm like, oh, I fixed this. I made this kind of go away. I was able to automate this. I was able to put this together. And I just started doing that for my clients. And I really fell in love with it. I went to school actually initially to be a web developer. So when it comes to like coding and technologies and tinkering with stuff and putting stuff together, that's always been me. I've been doing that since I was young. My father actually builds computers when he's not at work. So like anything with technology, I always did that. And from there, I just so fell in love with it. I mean, this was like a new world to me. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I realized so many people needed help doing this. So that's when I really transformed my agency to go from like strictly marketing to really helping people buy back their time from their successes. Even if they were new in entrepreneurship, there were so many ways to help them save their time. And I fell in love with that. I've been doing that ever since. So when it comes to automation and processes and just making it easier for people to get stuff done, I've been doing that ever since.
I think that's really cool because one of the things that I've always enjoyed doing has been tinkering with technology. And it's just like, it's like a kid turned loose in a candy shop. It's like, what could this thing do? What can I do with this? How does this work? And pulling it apart and figuring it out. But it takes a special kind of person to be able to take that tinkering, that propensity for tinkering, sort of messing around with things, and then being able to figure out how to use it in a productive sort of a way so that it actually helps other people. So I think that's a pretty special talent, a fairly unique talent. So that's cool. And so you've been running your own business for about 4 years. And just make sure that I understand correctly, you started doing all of that while you were in college and university. We'd call it university over here, but in
Oh,
Australia.
correct. Yeah. Yeah. Not college. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. At my university, I started like about 6 months before I graduated. I was working like 2 jobs at the time, still I actually worked for a marketing agency at the time as well. And so, yeah, I always had the idea for entrepreneurship because honestly, one of my life goals is actually to retire my parents. And so after I got like my first job and I was in college, I was like 18 years old. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to do something else because I'm an only child and I really want to be able to take care of my parents as they get older. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure out something else if I'm really gonna be able to do that for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because, and we're going to digress just very briefly, but it is interesting because the old sort of track of you go to university, you get a job with a big corporation, you stay there for a very long time, you come up the ladder, you have a massive salary, theoretically, which very seldom happens. That whole sort of dream, I think, has changed a lot over the last few years. I know certainly for my grown adult children, that hasn't been their path. I mean, they have done university and things like that, but the way they get to where it is they're going has been a very different circuitous route. And it sounds like it's been the same for you in terms of sort of taking a very non-traditional thing. Do you think that it's like that for a lot of your peers, your colleagues?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, the reason I even thought to have the desire to retire my parents is because when I was at my university and it was just, I don't know, to me, it was like a random day. One day I just started to notice a lot of people like who was working at my local Walmart, and the town we're at is a university town. Like literally, it's just a bunch of 20-year-olds who are there. But I realized people who are working at Walmart, who were working at the restaurants, who were delivering my food, were all people like 60s, even 70s, even older than that. And I'm like, wait a second, my grandmother had been retired. Both of them were been retired at this point. I'm like, how come they're still working? And I just started to do some research, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, most people really can't really retire. And that's just people who work at my parents' age. And right now they're like in their early 50s. But when I really looked at research, I'm like, wait a second, I can't, it's very unlikely. And at this point, anybody that's around my age, like in their mid 20s, it's like a sad running joke that nobody's going to really be able to retire. And I don't know how else to say it, but that's just the sentiment. It's like you're going to have to figure out something else if you really want to retire, or you just don't and you just keep working for the rest of your life. Those are really like, we've figured out that's the only two alternatives. It's kind of like the last of the retirement age.
And I think that's really interesting because I've heard my own children say that exactly that sort of sentiment is like their future is a lot different to my generation's future. And it's interesting and sad in a little ways, but also it opens up an enormous number of opportunities and potential for doing things in maybe a better way, possibly.
Yeah, it's because it forces you to think creatively. Because if we all know, or at least that's the sentiment, if we all feel like this is not going to be able to happen, immediately you can't hide it. So it forces you to have to think, okay, well, then how do I deal with this situation? Because it's not going away, right? And if I'm blessed by God, I will get older. And therefore, this is going to happen. So you have to figure out, like, I can't do the same thing as my parents, quite frankly. That's what I realized. I mean, I can't just keep working these jobs. And then it doesn't matter unless I'm working for like a Fortune 100 and I have this superior skill set, but that's going to take decades and it's not guaranteed. And what if that doesn't happen? And now I'm also 50 years old or something. And like, technically, maybe the retirement age is supposed to be 68. I don't even know now. But if I know that's probably not going to happen, I've got to be more creative and figure out what's the alternative. Is it investments? Is it working for yourself? Right? Or maybe it's something else we don't even know yet.
Yeah. And you take that creativity or that attitude of creativity and thinking about how can I do things differently? How can I do things better? And it sounds to me like you're bringing it to the work that you do with the people that you work with.
Yes.
Can you talk just a little bit about the way that you work in terms of how you go about figuring out what somebody needs and then how you help them put it in place?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I have a method, and I call it my 4C method. And it starts with having clarity. So a lot of times when people they want to schedule consultations with me, and when they're talking, I'm like, okay, let me know what's the situation. And they're like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I got this going on, and I just need systems and I just need automation. And I'm like, let's talk about what are you actually doing? Because most people are 3,000 hats in and they're performing all the activities, right? But there tends to be a particular set of activities that we're doing every day that we probably don't need to. And so I'm really just auditing them, but not like a financial audit, right? But I got to know, what are you really doing? So we have to clarify what you're doing and what you shouldn't be doing, right? And I make people have to like journal and diagram out what they're doing. So that way we know, okay, if you're spending all your time handling customer and client inquiries and they're asking the same questions and you're giving them the same answers, that probably could be simplified by just having an FAQ page. It's not even like a text thing. It's just a page. You write out all the answers there, and then that can be an auto response being sent to people. But it starts with understanding where you actually at, because I can't do anything until I know where you're at. In the same way that if I live in Michigan in the States, if I want to go from Michigan to Australia, I'm not just gonna like get on any plane that's going in that direction and I'm gonna get to Australia. No, I got to figure out where is Trudy actually at in Australia, because that's a whole country and continent. So I got to figure out what's going on there. And you figure out the map, you figure out the route, and then you actually work it from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does make sense, because you could end up some interesting places in Australia. Yeah,
yes,
very definitely. And you could even miss Australia if you just jumped on a plane. That's a really good analogy. I like that. I like that analogy. So that was the first part of your method. You said you had, did you say the 4C method?
Yes, the 4C method. Yeah. So the first C is clarifying. The second one is crafting that workflow, right? We're crafting that route. So after we understand where you're starting from, and now we know where you want to go, we understand what you're actually doing in your business. Now let's figure out your new process that allows you to take yourself out of the places you don't really need to be in. And let's clarify what it really needs to look like. So for example, again, in the same example of people handling a lot of customer and client inquiries. Okay, if people are asking you the same question over and over again, that must mean there's like a part in your process you're not already telling them what that information is, right? Because you really shouldn't have that many people asking about the same thing. So that means as we create your process, now let's see, okay, if people are asking about how long a project is. Let's make sure we're sending people a welcome letter after they purchase their service from you that details out how long this project is probably going to be, right? And lets them know, hey, it's an estimate, could be a little bit longer depending on such and so forth, right? But you let people know ahead of time, and now you just eliminate 90% of your inquiries because you just sent an email, right? And what you'll notice is like a lot of this is actually pretty simple. Like, oh, it's just an email. That makes a lot of sense. But a lot of entrepreneurs we're so in deep into it in our business and we're handling all the things. What's simple may seem complex, right? Until you do it. And it's like, oh, that really wasn't that much at all. But yes, that's the second C. We're actually crafting the workflow. The third C is actually creating. That's where we create the automation, or you're even creating and finding people to actually handle things for you and actually gaining a staff. But there's a reason a lot of people start with the tech side. I want this software. I got this marketing software. I'm paying $97 a month. I don't even know what it's doing. I thought it was going to solve all my problems. But that's not how tech works. That's not how tech works, but that's how we want it to work because we think that's easier for us and really creates a bigger headache. That's why I don't even invite technology. I don't even suggest you hire anybody until you know your process. And a part of that is what's the standard operating procedure? What is supposed to happen? And then from there, we figure out actually what automation, technology, or people actually come into play. And then the fourth C is continue. You're actually using the system you just built. Ironically enough, sometimes we build stuff, but we don't really use it, or we don't put the right people in place to allow them to use it if we're not supposed to use it ourselves. So that's like a little intro of the 4C.
And that's a really good framework in terms of thinking about it, because given my background, and I've talked about it before, I've worked as a chief information officer in big organizations, and it doesn't matter whether you have a big organization or a one-person band, those 4 C's are the absolute necessity. You've got to have those things in place in order to go from a specific way of doing things to a better way of doing things. And I think it's interesting that you sort of picked up on the last 2, which is about basically making sure that you've got something very clearly in place, very clearly outlined, you're using it, and you're making sure that you continue using it. A lot of times people forget that.
Oh, absolutely. I had to put that in there because even I'm a victim of that. I can build a bunch of stuff. I can build a lot. I make automations all day. That's my job. And sometimes even for my own business, I forget I just made this whole thing. I don't know why. I need to do it for myself. I have to walk myself through this method. And I can actually give you a really good example of that.
Yes, please.
I recently hired a video editor who just gave me my first video and he sent it to me and I'm reviewing it so I can give him feedback of anything that I kind of want him to edit. And I'm watching the video and he puts a particular section of B-roll in there that didn't really match my brand. It wasn't bad or anything. It just didn't match my brand. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a second, why do you use that? Oh, I never really told him what my brand, the image, what should be in there, what B-roll you should include, what should the actors look like in the B-roll, what they should be doing. I never did any of that. So of course he didn't know. And before I sent him my feedback, I spent like a half hour writing out a whole video editing standard operating procedure. Very specific, not even just about the B-roll, but also just about the brand, what it's about, clearly put that in there. And I sent it to him along with the feedback. And I said, hey, I want to send you this feedback. And I realized I never really explained to you what I want this to represent. And that's my fault because I'm working fast. I'm just trying to get a video editor because it happens. But I sent it to him. We had a good conversation. He's like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, thank you. And I even put in examples of B-roll that I do like that represents the brand. And I had a whole do's and don'ts. And he was like, thank you so much, because this makes a lot more sense. So he knows what to look for and how to edit my videos, even colors down to the fonts and all that stuff. So I'm a victim sometimes of working too fast. And we want to skip ahead again, hire, get the technology, and we just assume it's going to work out for us. But you got to go through those steps and then you got to continue to use it. So that what that means for me is that I got to make sure he also utilizes my SOP in future videos now that I gave it to him the first time. And we talked about it, we were clear, and he said he understood. So that's also part of continuing, because you have to make sure that your staff is using new systems and processes, especially if they weren't used to it to begin with, because that can be a difficult transition.
Yeah. And that is one of the mistakes that I have seen a lot of people make, especially if somebody's never managed somebody else before, or they've never hired somebody before. They are just assuming the other person is going to know exactly what to do without realizing that every business is slightly different. And then they wonder why it doesn't work, or the person didn't do it the way they wanted, or they end up getting cross and blaming the other person when actually they should be looking at their process and themselves and just going, I need to be more clear. So 100%, yeah, you've got to know your process. You got to get it down just crystal clear so that somebody else can read it and go, yeah, I understand what to do next.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
That was a great point that you just made about we assume the other person already knows our business and us personally. And it's like, they're not in our heads. That's why I couldn't even get mad at it. I was like, I can't be upset. He doesn't know. He's not in my head. I'm thinking he just knows. Why? This is a totally separate human being that has no idea who you are, why you do. I mean, they may know why you do what you do. They're not strangers necessarily, but they're not you. And that assumption that we want people to be us or that they already have our knowledge, even if they're very well experienced, unless you have a super clone that you just made right now, not a twin, a clone, nobody else is going to know what's in your head. And so how you effectively communicate that to other people, that's where SOPs come into play. That's where processes and having systems that other people can use. Because that's another reason why I have continue. Continue doesn't mean you continue to use it just yourself alone. It means other people should be able to continue using the process. Because really, you don't make systems strictly for you, you make them for everybody else. Because if you're having an online business and you also have other obligations, which we all do, because we all have personal lives and personal situations, you need to make it easier for other people to step in that aren't you and still run your business. So that way they still have a way of getting paid because money's coming in, it's flowing, clients and customers are being taken care of. But also you yourself as the CEO and entrepreneur does not need to be in it all like that. And you have the ability to still live your life because you didn't run a business to just be in the business all day long, 24/7. You likely have other things and other obligations and just a life to live.
exactly. And having the ability to take a holiday or a vacation when otherwise you might feel like you're forced to take your laptop with you, or you can't go at all because you're just so necessary to the business that you can't let go. And that becomes a prison over time.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that you've said it really well. So let's just talk a little bit about Zapier or Zapier. We could argue until the cows come. How do you say it?
I say Zapier.
You say,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've had some people tell me it's Zapier. It's just like, well, it's kind
Oh
of
my goodness.
Zapier. I don't know. Maybe we should ask the people who created the thing. I don't know. But
Right.
do you want to just talk a little bit about what it is and how you use it to help your clients?
Absolutely. So Zapier, I consider it to be the glue of the internet. And I also think of it as like the internet's translator. So what I mean by that is Zapier is that middle thing that connects two apps that don't natively talk to each other. So let's say Trudy spoke Spanish and I just speak English and we're trying to have a conversation. Well, Trudy doesn't understand me. I don't understand Trudy, but Zapier comes in the middle to actually be that translator. And now we can pass information, we can pass messages between each other. And now we have a way of speaking. So Zapier comes in the middle when you have two apps that don't natively, quote unquote, talk to each other. And it connects the two. So that way you can pass data, which also allows you to automate a lot of what's happening in your business between multiple softwares and multiple apps, not even just two. Yeah, I use it a lot. If we were on a podcast, I would show you my screen actually, because I have like probably 200 something zaps in my account personally. And I don't even think that includes the zaps that I use for my own clients. So it's full. Yeah.
So can you just give us maybe a couple of examples of what a zap, so just explain to people what a zap is and what it does. Just explain what a couple of them do.
Correct. Yeah. So a zap is a particular automation and it's multiple steps of an automation. So one zap may have like 5 steps in there, right? Or it can have 20, or it could just have 2, right? It depends on just what you build. It's pretty unlimited. It doesn't have, at least as far as I know, I haven't reached a limit in terms of how many steps I may have in a zap. And so one zap holds multiple steps. And it can do multiple things just depending on what you want to have happen. So to give you an example, one Zap I'm working on right now for a client is they get a lot of emails about events, right, in their Gmail account. They want those emails about those events to go into their Slack, right? And Slack is an instant messaging tool, for anybody who doesn't know. And so right now, Gmail and Slack don't talk to each other natively. So you can't just send any email from Gmail into Slack. So that's where Zapier comes in the mix. And what happens is when a new email in Gmail happens, I tell Zapier, hey, send that email into the Slack account. So that way a bunch of people in this channel can actually get that message. So people can see what the email is, how it works, right? Whatever's the content of that. That's an example. I think another really good example for if you're running an online business, and let's say you're running a service-based business, you probably use something maybe like Calendly or Acuity in order to schedule meetings and consultations and whatnot. From there, you might use a project management tool. Maybe it's Asana, maybe it's Trello, maybe it's Notion. There's a bunch of different ones, but the most common ones are like Asana and Trello. What you might want to have happen is every single time you get a new scheduled consultation in Acuity or Calendly, you may want to have a new project be opened up inside of Asana and Trello. Right now, Acuity and Asana, for example, don't talk to each other like that. But Zapier comes in the middle, and what you can say is, hey, Zapier, every time I get a new consultation scheduled in Acuity, I want you to send and make a new task for that inside of my Asana. And I want you to tag these people. I want you to set the due date to be a week from now. And that's it. And what you just created was one Zap.
And if you think about it, for anybody who's ever had to go through the process of getting, like, if something triggers this process, and then you've got to go and you've got to set up an appointment, you've got to set up a reminders, you've got to do all of these things, and they take time. They take a lot of time to be able to set something up that's going to just automatically do it for you. That is a huge time saver. It's massive time saver. So for whoever's listening to this and they're thinking, wow, I've got a whole bunch of things that I have to do that are very sort of administrative type things, and they're repetitive, but they take up a lot of time, I'm sure that they're paying attention now, because this is something that's going to save masses of time. What would be another example?
Oh, okay. Another one, a lot of times I use Zapier for data entry, which again, can become very tedious and very long to do when you're trying to find a bunch of things. So another example would be, maybe you want to keep track of your sales calls, okay? And again, using the example of Acuity or even Calendly, because it can work for both. Maybe you want to be tracking the consultations that you get, and you want to track kind of the results of them. So what you could do, another Zap you could do, is every time you get a new consultation, a new sales call scheduled in Acuity or Calendly, you can send that person's data into a Google Sheet that now keeps track of all the people over whatever period of time. You can send in the person's name, their email, their phone number, the date that they booked, and then the day that they actually had their consultation conducted. And now you see everything in your Excel sheet in one place. And then all you have to do is go back later on and say, okay, we sold this person, we got to follow up with this person, we sold them, they just said no, whatever is the result of that. And now you can keep track of that kind of in one Excel sheet or Google Sheet. Actually, I would actually suggest that with a Google Sheet if you're going to do something like that. But yeah, I use Zapier a lot for data entries like that.
Now, I can absolutely vouch for that, the brilliance of that process, because one of my processes is for a client, people will come through and they'll do a quiz. And then when they do the quiz, that becomes a lead. And these people, if they meet certain criteria, then they get invited to speak to the client. But the information goes via Zapier through a Zap. It goes and sits in a Google Sheet. And it basically lists out these people's names and email addresses and phone numbers. And then you can do exactly what you said. You can just go in and say, well, did they make an appointment to speak? Yes, no. Did they agree to purchase the service? Yes, no. And it just makes it so much easier, so much easier. And the thing that I like the best is that it generates a report for the client when they go through the quiz. It generates a report for the client that goes straight to them. So they've got all that information there for them when they're ready to talk to the client. And so you've just hit the nail on the head in terms of just a perfect example. It's great.
Oh yeah, it's perfect for that. I have a client that's building his sales team. And I came in because he's like, hey, we want to keep track of the sales, but how it's being used now, it just didn't really work out. And so I'm like, okay, what's the current way that you're bringing in sales? You're getting consultations. They showed me, and I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Every time you get a new consult, literally, they're going to go into this Excel sheet. And now when they have their weekly sales calls, they just review the sheet and they see who called who, when, did you book a sale or actual consultation? Did you do a follow-up with them? Did you book a follow-up with them? Did you sell them? Did you not? Okay, who needs to be responded to if they didn't actually purchase whatever their higher ticket offer is and whatnot? So yeah, literally do that. And what you're saying right now, I've seen that before actually. People having their quiz data go into sheets. So you can see everything because it gets so much when you got to look at people individually. Because a lot of times the software won't show you people as a group, not like the group data, but like a whole group of them where you can look at 1, 2, 3, 4 right then and there. So oftentimes you have to have a separate Excel or Google sheet, but it becomes a lot if you have to do that manually every single time.
And it makes it easier, as you said, when it's there and when the data is there as a group, or you're looking at people as a group, it gives you the ability to analyze that data, which is really valuable. It can be really valuable. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's key so you can make that decision that you want to make in your business about next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Khadirah, this has been really interesting, and I know that listeners are going to find it useful. Before we sort of wrap things up, have you got one thing that you'd like to share with our listeners that perhaps we haven't mentioned or that you think would be really useful, either in relation to your journey as an entrepreneur and setting up your business, or in relation to just that whole process of figuring out how to be more careful with time?
Oh, absolutely. I would say if some of the listeners who are listening, if you are like new in your business, and I'm talking about like less than a year, or even if you've been running your business for like a couple years, the best thing you can do is, even if it's just on a monthly basis, is to set some time just to journal out what you're actually doing in your business. I would prefer you actually do this like 5 days in a row, a week straight. I know it sounds like a lot. I promise you, you actually can only just take like 15 minutes of your time. But if you do that, you'll start to see what you're really working on, and you'll be able to measure your own productivity. Because we may have all the time in a day, depending if you're doing this full time, or you might only be able to have a few hours. You will be surprised at how much you probably aren't as productive as you think you are when it comes to doing what you really need to be focused on in your business. Which, if you're very young in your business, it's sales, it's marketing, it's taking care of your clients, right? But if you find yourself working on a lot of like customer inquiries, if you find yourself tinkering with technology that isn't functioning the way it's supposed to be, if you find yourself doing a lot of repeatable tasks, now you have found opportunities of where automation and systems, and even calling somebody like me to be like, hey, I need this. I don't know what needs to happen, but I need this to get fixed. So that way you can really spend your time in your zone of genius. You really have to focus on taking back your time to get to that zone, right? Because anything outside of that means not only are you being inefficient, but you're performing a disservice to your own business, as well as anybody that's connected to it. So staff, clients, future staff, future clients. Because when you had a job, or if you do have a job, we're all victims of sometimes you do multiple jobs, not the one job, but you're not doing everything. It's just, quite frankly, you're not doing absolutely everything in that business that which you work at. You might be doing 2 jobs at once, but you're unlikely to be doing 3,000. But that's exactly what we do as entrepreneurs. We have all 3,000 of those hats, right? You got to figure out how to pass out the hats. Pass out the hats to other people or other technology that can get the job done without you having to do it. So that's really important, because a lot of my one-on-one clients are people who have been in business maybe 3 years to 5 years, sometimes like 2 to 5 years or so. And they never did that. And now they're trying to they have to backpedal really and set up their foundation, because they didn't do that in the beginning because they just didn't know. They just don't know.
Yeah.
So that would be my one thing.
Yeah, that is a really valuable thing to share. And it's just so true. It's incredibly true. And it's never too late to start. I'll add that. It's never too late to start. Yeah. So Khadirah, thank you so much for being on the podcast. If people were interested in getting in touch with you or finding out more about what you do, where would they go?
You can all go to my website, which is omnipotentconsulting.com. You can also check me out on Instagram. I post a lot of content there. And it's just my name, Khadirah Muhammad. And you can also check me out on YouTube, which you can also find me by my name, Khadirah Muhammad. I promote and I post a lot of content about like leveraging technology, how to use it, tutorials, especially on Zapier. So if you're looking for that and you want to figure out how to put in systems in your business, that's the way to do it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And I have had a look at your channel, and it is definitely a useful channel. There's some really useful YouTube clips in there. So I would encourage people to go and have a look at the YouTube channel as well. Once again, Khadirah, thank you so much. It's been great.
Oh, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. And if you're listening and you have not subscribed, please do so. Trudy's podcast is absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.